My name is Akila, and this is The Black Men's Redemption. In this podcast, we talk with real Black men on issues that affect Black men on a whole. Let the healing begin. Welcome back to the Black Men's Redemption. We're here with Conroy Bonnick. Conroy, thank you for coming back on the show and talking with us. Conroy is
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Conroy, you are a guidance counselor, and as a guidance counselor and youth mentor, you're in touch with the young people from grade school, and you're actually a guidance counselor at a high school right now as well. So you know how the young men think and how they operate from they entering high school to they're leaving high school. So you're really the best person to talk about this specific topic with. So Our topic, as you all know, we're continuing our conversation around the hypersexuality of Black men and how that starts, the effects it has in their lives. So let's just jump straight into it. Conroy, where do you think hypersexuality starts for boys?
Well, undeniably, it starts in the home. You know, it comes from the society. It comes from media influence, the music, and yeah, I could go as far as slavery. It comes from slavery to slavery helps to shape that. And as you realize, the last time I was on the platform, when I said to you that, you know, if we want to understand certain behavioral patterns or phenomena, slavery will help us to put that into perspective, because you know, we can't take slavery out of the equation to understand who we are as a people. And the hypersexualized male as well is clearly an inheritance from slavery. We can probably touch on that another time, but I'm not going to deny that, because if you realize that, you know, even as male in our society, you know, it's okay for the male to lose his virginity, but it's not so much okay if the female loses hers. So the male is praised and the female is looked down on. So it's like a status for the male, and it's you know, what should I say now? A dishonor for the females.
Yeah.
So pretty much it's something that is inculcated in us from, you know, the early age, and it's actually coming from the culture.
So how specifically, like in any given young boy's life, how does that start? How does the exposure to sexual content? Have you come across that in dealing with your young men that you mentor? How does the introduction, not just as a society, but specifically to a child, how does an introduction to hypersexuality start? So
some of the introductory source, if I should put it that way, it would be peer influence. The child will get exposed to these things, even if the parent, you know, doesn't value or plant these kinds of a seed or speak these kind of adult language around the child. They may just hear it from a peer or a peer group. The internet, the Internet of Things, everything is out there. So there's no limitation on what they can see. There's no filter. And even if these students are so smart now, who Mark Prinsky considered to be the digital natives, even if the parent has parent lock or some form of, you know, parental filtration on the device, they'll find some way to go around the parent to satisfy their curiosity. So they're exposed to it online just the same. They can be exposed to it through the music as well. Not knocking the music, but, you know, the music is hypersexualized, as you would imagine, because I realize now Ilan Gully, right, is at the center of the discussion now because of said topic, the hypersexualization of eh, of the male and the hypersexualized context of it. So most of the experts are saying that, to pay tribute to the folk song, you know, maybe you could have done a little mixture while you're admiring the creativity. So pretty much the male is praised to have enough girl, you know?
Sure. So you said that some of that early interactions with sexual content stems from peers, peers introducing you to it.
Yeah,
You mentioned
yeah,
also the internet,
clearly.
unsupervised access to the internet. But what
And
age?
also, if I should just interject, I can't left that out. Parents speaking the adult language around the child, because we have some family structure like that. Once it's a male, they don't have any problem to say, you know, go and go get hold of a woman or much gone already. This kind of a thing. Or load the man make him have enough girl. So, because I witnessed I'm also a victim of that. I'm not going to deny that. Where, you get the green light to do whatever you want to do as a male. And that's a part of the culture. That's something that we probably need to look into to strike the balance, because it will be seen as a double standard, if you would appreciate.
I mean, I think any person at any age, male and female, they can see clearly that double standard and also experienced it for themselves, you know. I I mean, I personally didn't experience that as such. I am the older of a boy and girl, so I'm the older one. And my family has always been very intentional about not coddling. Some people would view it as coddling, but protecting their children from over sexualized content, and also with the acknowledgement to not hide it from them, because it was twofold in our household, not to
Mm-hmm.
expose them young and just let them run through it, but also not to hide it from them. Because notice when you start to hide things from children,
Mm-hmm.
as they reach a certain age, they're bound to find out from their peers, and their peers are going to tell them whatever they learned and however they learned.
So the
And
peer, they will share the unfiltered part of things. They get exposed to it with no sense of guidance. Parent will guide the child, because if a child is brought before us, then it's now our job to educate the child. Because they will be doing what they think should be done, or what they have learned from a source, and that source may not necessarily be a credible source, that would guide the child or help the child in a positive way. Sometimes that source just want the influence to reach as far as it can,
for
or
sure.
the exposure of sin.
So, have you ever taken note of the ages of these boys when they start to be exposed? So I guess exposure tends to start with, sexual content rather than sexual acts. So at what age do you find that they're exposed to sexual content, and what age do you feel that they're usually start to participate in sexual acts and encouraged?
The age range, I tell you the truth, because of the internet now, they can be exposed as early as you can just imagine. As early as they have a screen in hand, I would put it that way. When I was growing up, in terms of, you know, sexual, or what should I say, um, the performative masculinity, or the social pressure from peers. I was exposed to that in my teen years at high school. I grew up normal as a child prior to secondary, but the pressure came at high school. But no, I realized that there's no. It's as early as they get a screen for me, based on what I'm seeing. You know, um, and I'm saying all of that to say this, that whenever whenever the parent purchase a screen, a device, I'm referring to screen as a device, just to be clear for your listeners and viewers. It ought to be purchased or procured, with certain things in consideration, like, or am I going to put a parent lock or monitoring on this? How will it be used? Because one would appreciate that it's not just a device for educational purposes, or should I say, it's not just a device that would educate in a positive way.
Yeah.
This device can make or break the child, on the premise of, sexualization.
For sure. And so much other bizarre content out there. So we've kind of covered how sexual content can end up in the hands of very young children, often through the internet and through the access to these devices. What about the influence of their peers, and specifically older boys and men? When do you think that starts to come in? When do you think they become boys become encouraged by older boys and men to, start taking sex seriously, and like as seriously as they think it is?
I think in terms of, there's no timeline to it, because once the culture exists, then for the adults around these males, there's no timeline to it. If they're not so considerate, they definitely will be telling them that, no, time for you to go get a girl, what one, or how much you've gone already. Because I said that, as I said, it's a performative thing. It's what I call a masculine performative exercise. This hypersexualized thing. If you're a man, you have to go get some girl. So to me, I don't think. Maybe, well, it would be stronger around in the teenage years, but I see parents saying to toddlers 3, load the boy, make him, kiss up a girl, or, like they may be around other kids. And so you realize there's not necessarily a timeline to it when it's a culture fix thing, So we see where, the male is so hypersexualized, where they're pushed to be a masculine what should I say now, figure, and that pursuit of becoming or enjoying sexual experience or manhood, they forget the emotional development of the child is ignored, because most time we realize that the child is very hypersexualized, but they are not emotionally developed, so where the child is forced into something that they don't even fully understand, and the emotional aspect of it is lacking and ignored. So I think the emotional side of thing should be taken into consideration more, as opposed to hypersexualizing the male, because you don't want them to get in a relationship or create a relationship for just experience, or for just a rite of passage per se, whilst not understanding who you are. Because I think that's what the culture is doing. As I said, I'm not knocking the culture, but clearly, if you should assess it, that's where it's going, because some of these males are very aggressive and angry, and they think they should do anything at all to even the females, because I've experienced a lot of that. And when you try to explain something to them, it may seem as if they have a right to do these things that was learned. You understand? So I dare to say that it's nothing biological. It's strictly cultural. It's something that is, nurtured.
It's so interesting that you said rites of passage, because it almost seems to me that unless you did take a girl, you're not a man, And
Right.
it's almost as if they're pushing for these boys to become men so early. Like the very
Right.
fact that, you know, growing up, you know, teen years, late, early 20s, you know, find a little boyfriend or whatever, we're talking, and we're like, oh, so like, sometimes it turns to like, oh, so when did you lose your virginity? And one guy told me he was 12. And I'm thinking to myself, sorry, at the time I have a 12-year-old brother. I'm thinking to myself, who is going after a 12-year-old? And he told me that it was an older woman. And I said, even worse, why did no one stop her? Please
Um,
tell me.
so this is what I've learned as a Jamaican. So, and I don't think it's just unique to Jamaica. Maybe it's part of broader culture. The system, it struggles to see males as a victim.
Mm-hmm.
It struggles to see males as a victim because even at school, sometimes it's cool for the male to be abused by the female. It's only not cool when the abuse go a little too far or too extreme, you know, or until it flips. And then you might just say, then what happened? Why you never report it? Of course, you're not going to report it because you were so conditioned to think that it's fine, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It's okay to be touched by a female,
Mm-hmm.
but not to digress. So the older woman targeting the younger males, it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It is unacceptable, and it is just as bad, yeah, as a male targeting a younger female. There should be any double standard in this. So most persons are not prepared to say it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not the same. You know, there can't be any double standard. If it's not acceptable in law, then it's just not acceptable for the male or the female. So it's accepted, but it is unlawful. It is abuse. You know, the child is not at that space where they can make,
An
you know,
informed decision.
yeah, firm decision where they're emotionally ready. They will have, emotional attachment issues, and they just can't consent to it. So it's one of those things that we may have to give some consideration to. And that's why we're even on this topic. Maybe it may just raise this conversation in the right places. So I hope this video can go as far as it probably should,
It's
to spark
something that
some needed discussion.
consistently breaks my heart because
So that's
it's not one boy I've spoken to and that's happened. Like almost all of my male friends were exposed at a very tender age with a much older woman. Like say he's between 8 and 12 and she's 19 plus. And I'm really thinking like, first of all, the language surrounding it is not even a young boy was sexually assaulted by an older woman. It's not that statutory rape occurred. It's that, oh yes, man, him young, but him take on a big thing, small axe, big tree, and all of that. The very language does not create a space where the trauma is acknowledged. And they're trained to be told that it's not traumatic. It is not traumatic because man protect woman. And or if you don't, and worse, if an older woman coming on to you, or any woman, let's even say any woman, if any woman comes on to you as a man and you're not into it, oh, you must see that man. Because Of course. And to me, it almost creates the situation where men are not seen as humans in that sense. They're seen
Mm.
simply as sexual objects. We're talking about
Like
sexualization of
symbol.
women. What about
So
the sexualization of the
not to
men?
cut you. So you see what I'm saying? Because initially I said that they are colonial linkages or a connection to these things. Because men during slavery days they were commodified. They were hypersexualized. They were seen
Dehumanized.
as aggressive and um, 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 physically strong, and that justify their need to treat them a certain way and dehumanize them. And this is still happening now. You see it in media. You
And
know,
they're perpetuating it themselves too.
right. So it's one of those things, you know, that come from social, underpinnings, you know? It's one of those things.
It just it irritates me because it doesn't even seem as if they're aware that. All right, let me tell you what it seems like to me. And this is just me trying to understand these female pedophiles. It almost seems as if they might have themselves been hurt by men their age or older, victimized themselves. Now, if you've been victimized, your control has been taken. You know, your consent, your control, your autonomy has been taken. So if you are now trying to enter a situation where you have more control, would you, and is as a woman, would you enter a situation with another grown man who might try to exert his control over you? Or would you enter a situation with a younger man who was more, not even a younger man, let's not say that, a boy who was tender and young and not gonna fight back, won't, he'll let you do whatever, he'll let you do whatever because he's still trying to find his own footing. He's still manageable, he's still malleable. And so now you feel in control of the situation, but all you've done is pass on the trauma to a child.
And that's what I'm saying. What happened to all of that psychological and emotional damage?
But then that boy is going to grow up with this warped sense of sexuality because now he does not understand how the emotion comes into play. He cannot enter a sexual relationship with a woman in a holistic sense. And so now he becomes the very thing that you are running from. And you've now inflicted him onto society. You've now made him somebody else's nightmare. That's what it almost seems to be to me.
I think but that's a good position there. You're correct. So clearly, when we should be creating an emotional foundation for the child, allowing the child to understand, is our process, is our emotion, is emotion, I beg your pardon. They are being forced into the unknown to do things that, society believes that, are to be done, which creates more trauma, as they say, and it turns that person in a monster thinking that, oh, maybe I should just do some more girls to be so validated and to create a identity and to be as performative as I can be sexually. So clearly that is what is happening. They're turning more males into sex machines.
Exactly.
That way.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I think part of it also becomes that, I can only imagine for a young man in this society where, gallus culture puts a lot of pressure on you to perform, to be that man, and especially as a little boy, the older woman come on to you and you're not sure. I'm sure your own instincts are telling you, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't feel right. your own spirit trying to protect you in a sense. And afterwards, I can only imagine the aftermath. And I really hope I don't trigger people who might have gone through this themselves, but I'm sure there's all these voices in their head. Did I want this? Is it okay? Should I have done something different? Am I to blame? And there comes the loss of control, loss of identity, and really loss of innocence, because now you're thrust into the adult world of sex, and you were not equipped, not
Yes.
because you were bombarded with all of this, the physicality
Not
of it,
emotionally, not grounded.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And there lies the disconnect probably between the emotional side of sex and the physical side of sex, because they know all about the physical. They know how to put it in and do all whatever and all that stuff. But where does the emotional side, the taking care, the connection, then sex does not become sacred anymore. And then you can do it to anybody and anywhere, and it loses its sacredness.
Right. So it really confuses, sex and love, like it also creates a lot of emotional issue, relationship issues, just the same, and commitment issues, because they have been exposed to something that was not properly represented to them, they don't even understand why they're doing it, just the same, because it wasn't explained to them by the adults who preside over them, be it in the home or wherever. There are no positive role models, to help them make sense of, that side of the world. So, yeah.
Can you tell me from a sociological, psychological, standpoint, we've touched on how it affects relationships with men and women, a hypersexualized man. How does that show up in a relationship, in your opinion, from your observations, perhaps?
Well, so it will create attachment issues, clearly. It will not, it will confuses what sex is and then what love is, because for the male, because remember, it's performative, they've never got the chance to even be vulnerable, and if you're not vulnerable enough, it means that you're not in touch with your emotional side. You think it's not even okay to talk about emotions. You must be tough, because that's something that we can't ignore. When the males are even hypersexualized, they are even, you are to be firm, for you to be well off in the world of manhood. You can't cry.
Mhm.
You have to conceal these kind of emotional, uh, you know, struggles that you may be facing, because then it will not represent you well as a masculine being. And so you realize that it results into male not communicating well. So they're in the relationship, clearly you will be having some communication issues. And if there are communication issues, there are likely to be trust issues. And then, of course, it may just, destabilize the relationship. Because I've learned long ago that, to keep our relationship going, trust, sex, and communication they're like fuel, But it does affect the relationship, because you're going to be expecting something from somebody who is not so, the person doesn't have the capacity, or is not at the place to give you what you're expecting. And so in that sense, clearly, it will create some relationship issues, in my view, and following some of what the experts have said. So it does affect relationship. So it's it's like the male is struggling without knowing he's struggling because of what the culture placed him into. You know, you're not going to blame culture, but you know, there are pros and cons. There you know, there are pushbacks when it comes on to cultural experiences you would appreciate. And that's why it's called culture, because it becomes a norm. Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's acceptable, you know.
Or it's the
So
right path.
it's one of those things.
So we've seen the effects that, or even experienced the effects that hypersexuality has for Black men and where it stems from. What I'd really like to get into is, how do we heal from this?
Right. So healing. So the healing starts with self. You have to be honest. The issue ought to be acknowledged, and so clearly you don't want to start that relationship with yourself. You know, that personal, intrapersonal relationship, because one of the things we realize is that we tend to look outward, not inward. So you have to establish that relationship with self first. Sex education, that's important. You know, we have to move away from seeing a virgin male as weak. We have to see manhood as accountability. We have to see manhood as discipline. We have to see, you know, manhood as what should I say now? As something that is respectful, you know. So we have to change our shape, new perspective, and of course that will come through counseling. So we need some more role models. We need more, you know, emotional literacy, either conversations or sessions. We so for it to be reached, it will take some culture shift, but that's a big task. What matters is if it's been done in certain critical spaces like schools, church, home, you know. Let's start from there. That's where the healing starts from. Starts with you and with persons who can guide you along the way, you know, help you along that path so you can understand emotions and understand, you know, how it ought to be expressed. So, you know, sexual experience, you know, does not become a pressure. But something that must be respected, something that maybe sacred, if you will. Yeah. So predominantly, I think sex ed counseling that will help the person to heal and to be honest with self and be, you know, so that you can then move to you being vulnerable, because most males don't have to talk about these things because the culture taught them otherwise, that, you know, you're not man enough if you don't have conversations around these kind of things. So that's why I think honesty is very important, and to strengthen the relationship with yourself as well.
What do you think about the younger children? How do we correct the behavior before it happens? What should parents and guardians, influential people around them, how do you think that should be approached?
Values and attitude that to be shared from an early stage, so that certain actions and principles can be valued, because if it's valued, you won't find yourself doing it. So, you know, the values will guide the child outside of your presence. Just like you're planting a seed of guidance or to monitor the child's conscience or inner self, or, you know, so that they can be so so that they can give a good account of self outside of mommy or daddy's presence. So you know, have to ensure that certain, you know, morals and values are shared or inculcated into them from a very early age or stage, so that they can be so guided. It's just about education, you know, allow that person to be so educated, because they said that education changes behavior. And I believe in that, because once you know, you can't unknow. So as we would say in our colloquial language, you know, if you know better, you will do better. So essentially that would be happening with the individual or whomever may be reformed in this sense, you know. So it takes clinical support, especially if the person is a victim. Well, I may have been a victim. So I'm speaking from a source of truth, as somebody who, you know, who came up in the culture. So I can have a better understanding of it. I wouldn't need to be degreed or to be informed by the peer review to know about this kind of a topic, because I've lived it. I mean, it's my lived reality. And most Jamaicans can say the same thing. But then are they prepared to even speak on it? You know, because it's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah.
Most persons would even want to be interviewed because they don't know where the interview might go. So they would prefer, as I asked person about it, they must say, oh, me knows. I mean, I set up. But the truth is, you know, once you're informed, you understand what it's about, you just know you're gonna frame your position on topics like these. But and that's largely the issue. Persons are not talking about, you know, what's affecting the culture or the social structure, put it that way. So yeah, man, largely I think they need education, counseling, good role models. If I should just, you know, use bullets to summarize what I just spoke of.
I think as well with the younger people, I think overall, my generation doesn't have enough shame. And
Yeah.
it's very much a anything goes generation. And I think having mentors to give you a little bit of shame and to, you know, drape you up a little when you need to be draped up a little. I think that
Sorry.
yeah, man, that does go a far way, not just for the boys, but also the girls. But even to say to a young man, hey, you running around and visiting every little girl, that's not the way you express your masculinity, you know?
Mm-hmm. But
Having some, yeah, go on.
but I'm saying shame will be of no significance if they don't have a value system. So that's
True.
why I really touch on value, because if you value self-respect, you know, of course, it would be shameful if you value, you know, your family or your relationship. You know, if you value you, as I said, as I said, self-respect, then you would be ashamed. But what kind of value system they have, you know? So because of poor values, that kind of a shame of which you spoke is non-existent. It's not even there.
Yeah.
So but you can't expect shame from persons who are one, they value it, or two, sometimes, you know, they know it's wrong, you know, but there's a social pressure, you know? Social pressure is so strong where they want to maintain a face or maintain a particular identity, and as such, they are being led. So you've asked, how can it be healed? And I said they have to be what? You have to be honest with self.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just with counseling. If you're not honest with yourself, you're just giving some presenting problems, and we're going to stay all over the place. So listen, I think this starts with you.
Yeah.
You know, I know honest you are. Honesty must be at the conversation.
Unfortunately, it's a very hard conversation for most people to have with themselves, and to sit with themselves and to be still long enough to have that conversation. And I hope that's something that, you know, people will value and take upon themselves to have that conversation with themselves and start the process.
Yes.
Yeah. Conroy, thank you again so much for being here with us and for participating in the conversations. As always, you are such a valued guest on our program.
Appreciate it. Happy to know that.
Yeah. So until next time.
Yeah, man. And of course, let's keep the conversation going, you know, because, you know, the hypersexualized male, only if, I don't know who may be watching, this will, you know, motivate them to probably do some introspection, you know, and this may just be an impetus to allow them to how do I put it now, to improve upon their views or the way they perceive female or their sexuality, because that's the whole point of this, you know, because they have to be looking at it through the concepts lens. We want to analyze it as much as possible, you know, the what, the why, the how comes, or how is it affecting, you know, the us and the broader society. So that's why I'm here most times. I try to be here at least when I'm called upon, to see if I can probably help to shape a narrative that will, by extension, help the society. So thanks again for having me. I said, I hope this conversation can raise some awareness in, you know, in the right places. Thank you so much. Until then.
Hey, just saying, if you ever need a female perspective on the society on cons ops, I'm here. You can have me as a guest.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. What if you need a rise, you know, we'll make it work.
For sure. All right. Have a great rest of the day.
Cool.
This has been another episode of the Black Man's Redemption. If you have any questions or comments, or want to pose a new topic, leave a message for us on one of our podcasting platforms, or leave a comment or direct message at our Instagram at Black Man's Redemption. We'd like to thank our guests for their contributions and our listeners for their questions. Now is the time for healing. Let it begin.